So last episode, you both wore black college sweatshirts. Why did you choose a HBCU?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, for me, I feel like I didn't know anything else. When you have two parents that went to Howard, it's almost like you don't get a choice, but you do get a choice. Um, I remember my dad talking about his experiences at Howard and running into Debbie Allen and Thurgood Marshall coming on campus, and then being raised in the 90s, you have a different world that was actually like a very great depiction of the HBCU experience. So for me, I didn't think about anything else. I don't think I even applied to any other college. I originally wanted to go to Florida A&M, wanted to go to FAMU. My mom was like, that's too far, you're not responsible, it's a no. And so went on my quest of like, okay, what's next? I have an uncle, my dad's youngest brother, who went to Dell State, and he also taught there as well. And so he was like, why don't you come? It's far enough to where ain't nobody just gonna get in the car and just drive by like my dad would probably have done at Howard, because 1,000,006 times we would go in the yard and he would show us this tree that he planted during his time there back in the 1800s. And so I was like, no, I don't want to be that close, but it was still a drivable distance. And so, when my mom gave me the okay that it was like close but far enough, also with having, a relative there, it, made the decision a bit easier for me to choose Dell State. And I was glad that I did. I wanted to be in an arena where my parents had always described the blackness, the beautifulness, the intellect, and it was probably the best choice that I have ever made to really come in contact with people who were from all walks of life as Black folks that were really going after something much bigger. And so for me, it was like, that's all I ever wanted to do, was go to a HBCU and be a HBCU graduate and have the same pride that I felt that my dad did with, unfortunately, going to Howard.
That's an intriguing question. I really didn't have Howard. Well, I actually had Howard as a choice originally when I decided I was going to go to college. But it was a choice between Long Beach State, where my Uncle Donald was, and Howard, where my Uncle Danny was. The interesting thing about that is I tried a white college situated in Newark, New Jersey. Newark was predominantly Black, and the college was, back then it was called the Newark College of Engineering. Now it's New Jersey Institute of Technology. It was situated right in the heart of Newark, and it seemed to me that everybody there was white. With the exception of the Black Student Association, and that really bothered me, that Newark would have a center right in there, and the Black people were treated like welfare kings, that kind of thing. That bothered me for some reason, viscerally. Now maybe I read it wrong because I was young, but when I got a chance to go to choose between Long Beach State and DC, DC was the closest. I didn't have to rely on Dad to pay the way to get there. Grabbed my bags and went down there to check it out. Now, I'm from Elizabeth, New Jersey. I'm from the hood. When I got to DC, I saw the hood. When I got to Howard, he rolled me around and I saw the hood. So instantly, people can say what they want about the hood. If you've been there and you've embraced it, then you know the greatness of it. And I saw that. But when I got on campus, man, look, I saw everybody from every part of the world, and they were rolling. And I remember calling him on the phone and saying, don't even bother come get me tonight. I could do this, this Howard thing. And I don't know why anybody else would go anyplace else. I hear people actually go to Delaware State, places like that. I heard about Delaware State. I thought it was a prison in any event. But the idea of going to Howard, it became for me home away from home, and it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made to go there. I met people who actually functioned like me, who functioned at a higher level that therefore would push me, professors who actually embraced me, and were able to drag out of me what potential that my mom and my dad said that I had. And so actually it became a legacy because my dad was a Morehouse man. I felt sorry for him once I went to Morehouse, but it's your dad. You got to love him. You got to take him where you find him. So, but it was HU, and as the expression goes,
Welcome back. If you're here, you're on episode 2. Clap it up for you. We're proud of you for sticking around. After this episode, I don't know how long y'all gonna be with us because it starts to get where it needs to go. But welcome to the 1219 podcast, 2 generations, 1 conversation. I'm one half of, as I always say, your soon-to-be favorite podcast, Imani B. You can find me out in these streets fighting the power, repping Blackness like no other, and, shining like a star. And I'm here, of course, with one half of this podcast, one of my favorite people on the planet, my dad.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. I don't know why I'm here. This woman keeps dragging me to these podcasts to have conversations that we've had over the 40 years. But look, again, I think it's a conversation worth having, intergenerational. You and I, we've had these conversations. All the kids have had this conversation. And let's open up this conversation to the rest of the community, and let's have the conversation that's needed to move the community forward and the conversation forward. So let's go.
Listen, so speaking of that, right, I got my phone out, Dad, because you've gone viral, right? Now, not to be confused, because your generation virality might mean something different.
I don't even know what viral means, in case you want to know.
That means the people are feeling it. The people are digging it, right? So the clip of episode 1, if you're tuned in now, episode 1, you've already watched the full episode, right? That was our birthday episode. That's our inaugural episode 1. For this episode, I want to pick up from Brown versus Board of Education, because that's the one that went viral. That's the shot heard around the world, where people pick that up, the segment where you're talking about how the bulk of Black folks, were opposed to Brown versus Board of Education. I don't want to necessarily stay there. What I do want to talk about, though, is something that is a conversation that we have circumnavigated around a lot when I call you and I'm like, these niggas. And I want to talk about Blackness. I want to talk about, what does it mean to be Black, to be classified as Black, to be culturally Black? What does that mean to you? Because one, we're talking about 2 different distinctions here. We're talking about intergenerationally. Being Black has a different interpretation, I feel, as a millennial than it might be for you as a boomer, somebody born in the 50s and raised in the 60s. So as a boomer, first, I would ask you the history of Blackness for yourself. What does that mean to you?
Okay, that's an intriguing question. Let me just deal with the Brown v. Board, because I read some of the comments that you sent me, and one of the intriguing things about it is that I did say, and I stand by it, that the vast majority of Black people were antagonistic to the idea that Brown versus Board of Education stood for integration. The idea of Charles Hamilton Houston and the strategy behind that case was desegregation, not integration. Integration brought about the destruction of schools that featured Black education. Desegregation would have brought the money as a matter of law to be equally spread out across the board, and Black people would have gotten the same that white people were getting in their community to educate their children in their communities.
Separate but equal.
So there we go. So separate but equal was the law of the land, and the court determined that separate but equal was inherently unequal, not because of anything except that the monies that were being used toward educating in European communities and so-called white communities was not being shared in Black communities. And so even with the experiment of Black kids and looking at dolls and all that kind of stuff, that was a shift in the strategy that, frankly, I didn't agree with, and because I don't know any Black kids that thought that white kids, that white dolls were pretty. I just don't know. And I know they've redone it in 2017, 2012 with CNN, etc. But the point was, desegregation was the goal when they started that. When they began to focus on integration, the vast majority of Black people were not rocking with that. They did not want to have to send their kids to white schools. And I stand by that. And it wasn't just the South. I wasn't in the South. I was in Jersey. It's like, leave that. You couldn't have gotten me to say I'd rather go have Mr. Epstein as opposed to Mr. Randolph. Mr. Randolph's my black 5th grade teacher who pulled me out of the hood. He became the father in the classroom. And Mr. Hawkins in the 6th grade became the father in the classroom. That's what ushered into the things that I was learning at home. They were able to verify, and therefore that pushed me into education matters. So now, blackness. Do you know that in my lifetime, if somebody called you black, that was a fight. I mean, I'm talking about in my lifetime, and I'm still here.
Right.
All right. So you didn't grow up with that.
Exactly.
In my lifetime, if someone called you black, it was a fight. The shift happens culturally first.
Right.
You begin to see Africa begin to grow. You begin to see the liberation movements in Africa. You begin to see the civil rights movement, and the chance for leaders to begin to say, you know, there's an interconnection between Africa and America. I mean, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech uses the word Negro. So think about it. You have Negro, colored, and black was the insult in the black community. But as they begin to have a more cultural awareness with the civil rights movement, with the black consciousness movement, they began to move toward understanding the intimate connection between Africa. This is why Malcolm says, if you saying you ain't leave nothing in Africa, why you left your mind in Africa? Isn't that what he says? This is 63. All right, so this is what you're talking about. So he's trying to get them on a whole nother level of thought process, but it's a cultural expression, that interconnection between what's going on in Africa and their various revolutions, in Somalia, for those of you who say that they say they're not black, in Kenya, in East Africa, in West Africa. These people are fighting for their liberation and their freedom. Why are they fighting? They're fighting because they were colonized, right? Europeans got together and divided Africa up bits by piece. And what happened? Whenever Europeans got to Africa, it didn't matter what tribe you were from.
Right.
Everybody was black. South Africa adopts apartheid in 1945. That's when you get the classifications for them of black, colored, white, Afrikaner, right? That means that regardless of what tribe you were from, someone else was defining, naming, and speaking for you and calling you black. That's exactly what was going on here in the United States, because South Africa borrowed from Jim Crow. And they would admit it. So they got the concept of calling everybody they saw who had dark hue black. If they had brown hue, they called them colored. If they had so-called yellow hue, but there's no yellow man, all right? Chinese are Chinese. Japanese are Japanese.
Right.
They began labeling El Salvadorian brown is an insult to the El Salvadorian. He's allowed to keep his El Salvadorian, except here in America, because you have no place else to go. So when they called you black, you then had to fight with the argument of whether I'm a Negro or African American. So now you begin to see people begin to move toward the concept of Afro-American. I'll give you a funny story. The Hate That Hate Produced, 1959, is a documentary by Mike Wallace on the Nation of Islam. And he says that they are the black Muslims, a way of obviously separating them from the universal community of Muslims. The black Muslims was pissed over that, of being called black. They wanted to be called Muslims from the Nation of Islam or just Muslims. They were pissed about being called black. But that's, you see here, Malcolm started talking about Afro-Americans, et cetera, and the conversation began to move because it was moving away from Negro. It was moving away from being defined and named by white folks, right? Just like in Somalia, they fought for their freedom. Just like in Kenya, they fought for their freedom. But they were called black. 200 tribes in these places, all of them were labeled as black. When they freed themselves, they called themselves Somali. And they refused to be called black. Why? Because they would refuse to accept what came from European colonization, at least on that level, in order to reclaim the definition of who they were. Black in America becomes popular with the movement in the civil rights movement. Right after the civil rights movement, it's like guys like Malcolm who began to say, I'm black.
Right.
All right? But black is a descriptive. We begin to see black become a translation into ethnicity and things along that line with that particular movement at that particular time. But still, haven't identified a continent or a country or whatever that says that this is black land. I mean, you had arguments like that. Okay, well, show me what black land is. I mean, I'm telling you, this is what was going on in the streets, right? And they would literally have arguments and fights over that. Your generation grew up black. Black was accepted to call you that, right? Because the Black Power movement came along and said, look, we are tired of we're going to take this word or this description and we are going to redefine it as being something that is powerful. We are no longer going to accept when someone says angel food cake is white and something is black or devil food cake is black. These negative connotations to it. They began to see that when the master, the sensei, has on a belt, it's black. And that means he's the master. So they began to take those cultural interpretations and add them to the discussion as to what is black. In the Arab tradition, the person who is the teacher, the master, wears a black turban. The students wear a white turban. So they began to take these things and begin to master, to say that this is what the master looks like. So black isn't as bad as white folks have defined it. So we are going to redefine ourselves, and we're going to start with the very basic. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. By the way, James Brown was not down with that. No, I'm telling you, they had to step to him on that. The Panthers stepped to him, and I believe it was Jamil El-Amin who stepped to him, that is H-Rap Brown. You need to do something that talks directly to our people. And we are now redefining away from white supremacy thought that we are black and we accept our blackness as being the masters. And that's when he came out with Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and took the conch out of his hair. Reverend Sharpton, in case you're listening, took the conch out of his hair and read and began to wear an afro.
And let me just also say, because someone pointed it out in episode 1, when my father references Jamil El-Amin and says H-Rap Brown, it is not out of disrespect of the fact that Jamil El-Amin had changed his name. It's just a point of reference. So in episode 1, when he says Stokely and he says Black Power, we know Stokely as Kwame Ture, and we give that deference and respect, but we're also talking about time period, time frame, and trajectory, and giving respect to who people were at what periods of time.
There's a fact. That's a fact. But again, it's the same translation.
Yeah.
Right? If you call me a Negro right now, right, that's an insult. In my time, being called black was an insult.
Right.
As we begin to move forward, the names don't go away, because when you listen to King's speeches or other people's speeches from those times, you'll hear them calling themselves Negroes.
Right.
All right? So it's no disrespect then.
Right.
It's a disrespect now.
Yeah.
All right? But to help people understand the history, sometimes you have to refer to him as Rap Brown so that people know who we're talking about. Die Nigga Die was written by H-Rap Brown.
Exactly.
Revolution by the Book was written by Jamil El-Amin.
Right.
So it's the same person, 2 different books, 2 different times.
Exactly.
You know, so.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you say that, because like you said, my whole lifetime, blackness to me was always easy to define. Nothing that way. If somebody called me black, I'm like, hell yeah, damn proud. But what I'm seeing now is like, with our folks, is now we're creating these like segments. So as you were talking about, in the 60s, we were exhibiting this cultural pride by this shared Pan-Africanism, right?
Well, hold on, let me just interrupt. The discussion was about cultural pride.
Right.
When you say we, there's a lot of black people who are literally resistant to being taken away from Negro or colored. I'm telling you, I had an uncle whose son became the first superintendent of schools. And I ran into him as I'm practicing law. So that means I'm a grown behind man. And I run into him in the post office. And he's bragging. You see, your cousin, he the first colored superintendent of schools. And I said, colored? He said, yeah. I said, do you mean black? Because now I'm going to mess with him, because I always mess with him. Don't be bringing that black shit to me. Don't be bringing my back. He colored, I'm colored. He always going to be colored. This is in my lifetime and as I'm grown. So you're talking about what, 80s, 90s, that this uncle is telling me this, So it's not like everybody was rocking with that. And there's still some people right now, if you call them black, they're they'll step to you in a minute.
But to that end, I'm glad that you point that out, because unfortunately, in a place like social media, when you say we, people automatically assume that I don't ever mean we all. I mean those of us who do, those of you who don't, y'all over there somewhere. But those of us who do have that cultural pride of Blackness, right? And even the people who had that Pan-Africanism and wanted that connection of shared identity of Blackness with folks overseas, with their West African roots and things of that nature, right? And the folks that began to change their name, they became the Kwame Tourés, they became the El Hajj El Malik Shabazes, they became, Bashir, you know what I mean? They carried that Blackness as a cultural identity and a marker that created what it is that we have as cultural pride as millennials, those of us that do. Because then you have the folks who, it's almost like a cultish type of thing. Well, we're ADOS, we're American descendants of slaves.
I was wondering what that meant.
We're foundationally Black Americans.
I've heard that 1,000 times. But the ADOS, I kept hearing people use the acronym. And I said, I'm going to look it up, but I never got around to looking it up. And it's been over a year. I've been kept saying it. So I'm going to look that up.
American descendants of the enslaved. And for me, I was like, oh yeah, ADOS. Prior to actually really diving into what this whole thing is about, it's a very separatist, almost like right wing, because then it becomes, well, it's us, but not y'all. And it's gotten to the point where, and I never thought I'd see the day as someone who is very culturally proud of my Blackness, of my lineage in this country. As unfortunate as it may be, it is what it is, and I am who I am, and I'm extremely proud of my ancestry. But I've literally had people come online debating me about where I'm from. When I'm talking about Black people, Black Americans specifically. Right. Well, where you don't look like you're from here.
Right. But I'll give you something for your own history, your own edification. Your people came here by virtue of being part of the people who were the Moors who went into Spain and matriculated from Spain here to the Americas. So there were people who look just like you, who have that aswad, that means that what we would call black skin, who were here before Columbus. You can look up the book. They came before Columbus. I don't know if it was Van Sertima, I think. They're talking about you. In fact, in the book, there's a picture. If you see it, it's going to make your jaws drop because it looks just like your grandfather. You would have thought it was your grandfather, all right? But that's the point, because the bottom line on Blackness is that I don't tell you whether or not you're Black or not. And I don't think I have the right to. If you say you're Black, then alhamdulillah, you Black. I mean, and so but I could still rock with you because I'm allow you to be who you are, who you want to be, all right? But take that now to what's going on in the stream. You all have, again, foundational Black Americans who are upset with Somalis who say they're not Black. But what they're saying is they're not defined the way they were defined when their culture was taken away from them through colonialism. So they refuse to accept Blackness in that term, that white people have the right to define us. Now, there are some who are handkerchief heads in there who just don't want to be with the caca, with the nigger, all right? They don't want to be associated with so-called Black Americans.
Right.
But the vast majority of the reason for it is, again, once you reclaim your culture, you want to hold on to it. You don't want definitions that are given to you by someone else. So they say Somali, maybe for 10, 15, 20, a generation, they lost the connection to what tribe they were from. So they want to go back to that. So when they say we are from Somaliland, we are Somalis, they're not doing a diss on Black America. Although, again, when I say they, I'm not talking about all
of it, right.
But there's some cats out here who really think they have that colonial mentality, who would wear a wig to the courtroom and all that other kind of stuff that white folks gave them, thinking that they somehow better because they from Somalia, they speak their own language or Arabic or whatever else. And so therefore they are better than the kaka, the dirty name that they would give African Americans.
Yeah, and as someone who has lived abroad, you know, I've lived in 5 countries. And so when I hear this conversation happening with Black Americans, Black people in America, versus Black folks who immigrated into the United States, it's often like a talk in circles, because the reality is Blackness and the way that we use it contextually in the United States is very different than how it's used now globally, now that we have social media and things like that, where people are able to really explain what Blackness means to us. It's something different.
Right.
But, you know, when I see people get upset that somebody doesn't want to identify themselves as Black, for me, I'm thinking to myself, once you step inside of the threshold of the boundary of the territory that is known as the United States of America today, you are Black if you have Black skin. Whether you are Yoruba, whether you are Somali, whether you are El Salvadorian or Brazilian or whatever it is, if you have a certain hue of skin, you are Black in America. And so for me, it doesn't matter to me how it is that you identify. What matters to me then is how it is that you come into the culture of what it is that the people of this land have built. Right? Because something that I know as somebody who has gone abroad, who has immigrated outside of the United States, the expectation is I am the person of privilege to come over here. So I am now a student. I am now a guest in your home. And so it is important for me to, as they say, when in Rome, do what the Romans do, right? So I'm not going to make a store in your neighborhood and put bars on the window. I'm not going to create all of these businesses that are Black American only in your country, in your area of the world, right? So I understand the disconnect when folks come over here and they do those things, forgetting that there's whole communities that have existed for hundreds of years that still deserve that respect and that consideration to come together. And I think that colonialism, imperialism, and the disconnect of what we know about each other has done a great job in misinforming us about each other. Whereas now with social media and people getting their passports and traveling around the world, they're like, wait a minute. I went to Fiji last January. I had no idea Fijians are what we would identify as racially Black.
Absolutely.
Afros, beautiful brown skin. They are the quintessential, like you're going to the South. They feel like a warm hug. Never would have known that, you know, because the Pacific Islanders you ever know about, they're from Hawaii. They might be Samoan. You don't know anything about Micronesia. You don't know all of the segments of all the things. But I think that that's purposeful, because if you realize that you are a global majority, then you move as a global majority. But if you believe that everybody is segmented and so different, then you move as that as well.
Facts. And I think that's one of the problems that we have generationally. Your generation has Blackness in the core of their being. And so therefore, unfortunately, many of them feel like they have the ability to define what Blackness is internationally. And that's not necessarily the truth.
Yes.
But a couple of examples. If you read April 4th, you'll hear the story that I wrote about a brother named Ghulam who came to live with us when I was like 12. All right. My dad they used to sit up all night and have conversations. Him about colonialism, dad about racism, white supremacy. And they started out here, extreme ends, one being better than the other.
Where's Ghulam from?
Ghulam was from Senegal. So he stayed with us maybe about 4 months. All right, he was a student. And so you begin to see them working their way, with me sitting there as a 12-year-old, working their way closer and closer to an understanding that the concept both came from white supremacy. Who was doing the definition of what it was to be a man, what it was to be free, what it was to be Black? It was being done by white supremacy. And so eventually they broke down, and I'm saying, like, look, I think they both read Wretched of the Earth, and if they had just read it and understood it, they would have understood that when somebody is calling you out and doing the one who's doing the defining, then they are literally limiting who you are. Now, you can't, as a generation, get into that same category of telling other people who they are, and you have no idea what their experience was. You understand? Ghulam was the first experience. I'm 12. I get to Howard, and Amira is born. She's born at Howard University Hospital, your sister. I'm so beat. I'm tired. The labor was like 27 hours. Shout out to your mom. She went through the entire thing. I got a chance to sleep. I went to sleep. I call a cab to catch the cab back to campus. I pick up some flowers. I pick up a doll. I'm a first-time daddy, so I'm doing all the things that you think you're supposed to do. A brother from the Horn, I won't tell you what country, from the Horn picks me up. And I said, I'm going to Howard University Hospital. I jump in the cab. We driving. He sees the flowers. He sees the doll. He says, you heading to the hospital? Somebody's sick? I said, no, my wife just gave birth to a baby. He said, what? Arrogantly. What did you say? I said, is there a problem, brother? He said, oh, I'm sorry. You said your wife. I thought I heard you say your wife. I mean, like dismissively. And I said, I did. You're married? I said, yeah, why would you ask a stupid question like that? Didn't I say wife? Now the
jersey is coming out.
The McGlory Manor Housing Project is about ready to come out of me. I'm like, why would you ask a stupid question like that? Oh, no, I'm sorry, brother. We were told that Black Americans, you ready? Mm-hmm. Black Americans don't marry their women. Now, how was Amira now? 45?
Younger.
83. So this is like 82, right? This is what he's telling me in the car. And I said, well, let me ask you something, brother. Who told you I was black? He said, what? I said, yeah, who told you I was black? He said, what do you mean by that? I said, who the hell are you to tell me who I am? Why don't you ask me who I am and let me tell you who I am? I said, I didn't tell you you were black, and you dark as me. I said, but I bet you from the Horn. I bet you from Somalia, you from Ethiopia or something. And I said, and frankly, I could tell you where you're from if you really want to know. And I can tell you your history, but you can't tell me mine. And so therefore you can't define me. I said, so now do me a favor. Whatever book you were reading, whatever they told you at the immigration office, carry your happy behind back, tear up the book, and don't ever address another man who you see like me in the way you address me without asking the question. Let me define me. Mm-hmm. But they come here, some of them come here with the notion that black people don't get married, they don't take care of their children, They have all these stereotypes that come from colonialism, and they think they better, and I get that. But that's because they lost a generation to colonialism. That generation that is trying to get them to get back to being Ethiopian, back to being Kenyan, back to being Somali. And saying we're rejecting the white definition of calling us black as one group. That's all we are is black. They're rejecting that. But there's a generation that they lost in between there that doesn't know what the hell they are. So the idea of being Somali for them just means, okay, I wear hijab, or I'm in America and therefore I can go to church or whatever it is. I can do all the things that Americans do. But they don't know, just like you said, when the cop pull them over, they black.
Yeah.
And if they open their mouth too loud, they nigger.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And that's the part that they need to understand, but that's the part that your generation has to communicate to them without defining them. This is how America sees you. And so if they see you like me, you need to be with me more than you need to be with them. And they are so busy running from the stereotype that they got from their colonialism that they keep missing the boat. And therein lies what I think is the next great problem for the concept of blackness, especially in the Western Hemisphere, is that where are your allies? And the more times you divide yourself by saying, I'm a descendant of slaves and therefore this matters to me, and you can't participate in that. Or I'm a foundational black American. They can't throw me out because of the 14th Amendment, but I'm gonna let them throw you out, even though you're only here by virtue of the 14th Amendment. I don't give a damn how foundational you are. If they cancel the 14th Amendment, they shipping you, they doing something with your behind, the same thing they're gonna do with Somalis. And so the ability to unify and to come together has to be on the understanding of how you became black, and also allowing them to tell you how they became black and how they rejected it, if they rejected it.
And also a more collective stance that makes sense and holds true to a global blackness. I remember when we were at the height of this ICE situation with the Trump administration, and I remember making a video and unfortunately seeing so many black folks that were like, that's not our problem. And I remember making a video and I was like, whatever happens in this country, we will always be the worst of those recipients, right? And then we had that ICE raid in Chicago, in that building where they literally helicoptered down over top of this building, our elders, our youth, at the ass crack of the morning. They're pulling people out of their apartments. They are literally shifting furniture, everything. They ruined the entire apartment building, didn't put anything back together, and was like, okay, y'all can go about y'all business, right? Mm-hmm. And I say, hey, Black folks, this is just one example of how we will always be the worst of the recipients. And people still said, well, they were looking for some Venezuelans. They were looking for some gang members or whatever the case may be, just for us to then find out that I believe one of these banks, one of these big banks,
Wells Fargo or something like that.
I guess you were going to say the name, but
or something like that,
trying to buy the building and displace the Black people who lived in that building. And so for me, I think to myself, you know, all the time, because I consider myself a Pan-Africanist. I understand the beauty of globalization, the people who it is that I look as actual leaders, like a Kwame Ture, like a Malcolm X, like an Audre Lorde, you know, believed in globalization and a global coming together of Black people, right? They give us examples of where they have talked about Palestine. They have talked about the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. They have talked about all of these things prior to my entry even into the world. So I know that is the path that I need to stay on, in terms of we need to come together as a quote unquote global Black community and really understand each other, who we are and what makes sense for us. Yeah. And so for me, I've told so many Black Americans, just by numbers, we don't have enough of the numbers, whether that's capital, whether that is support of each other, to go at this world in a silo, to say it's just us versus everybody else. But we do have those numbers when we include our brethren from across shores.
Absolutely.
That actually are very much intimately connected with our oppression. Our oppressions are very much linked. Having gone to Cuba recently, I have been in such an awe of just how we are connected with the revolutionary spirit of Black Cuban people and our freedom fighters here in the United States, and how that intersected with the Black Power movement and Assata Shakur's and et cetera, and how it is that they enveloped and protected them there. Right. And I think that we need more of that, where it is we're not defining each other.
Right.
But we're saying, hey, I see you and me, and I see me and you, and also our experience are nuanced and a little bit different here and there. But what it is that we need to win collectively as a people, we need each other to do that.
Right, right. It brings me back to the story between Ghulam and Dad. How they started out in extremes, and by the time they finished here, they had worked their way here to understand that the solution lies in the coming together, not in the finding ways to be apart. And I don't care what you say about me. Do you understand that you're being oppressed in Senegal? Do you understand that you're being oppressed in Brooklyn? Do you understand that the same person who is oppressing you in Brooklyn is oppressing me here, is oppressing me in Senegal? Do you understand that? And so therefore, do you understand the need for coming together? The Black consciousness movement, it didn't just impact Amiri Baraka here in the Black arts movement here in the United States. It impacted Steve Biko in South Africa. He had his own Black consciousness movement. You understand? And therein lies. And the idea that Malcolm X was assassinated. Okay, but so was Patrice Lumumba.
Right.
And the CIA is allegedly intimately connected to both of them. Why is that? The fear of that particular unity, that particular coming together, that particular sharing of resources and energy, etc., and ideas is potentially a universal time bomb. That the more we find ways to divide ourselves on something as basic as, well, he don't call himself Black, so I'm not rocking with him. And I'm connected to America. That tells me that you are more concerned about America than you are concerned about justice. You are more concerned about America than you are concerned about freedom. You are more concerned about America than you are concerned about your fellow man, your brother. And to me, that's scary, because what does America really stand for if you're on that bottom rung of white supremacy? It stands for keeping a foot on your neck and making sure you never rise above the level that white supremacy has defined you in. You are a second-class citizen. You will always be a second-class citizen as long as you consider yourself foundational to America. If you find yourself willing to step outside of saying that I am part and parcel of the American dynamic, the part and parcel that stands for morality, you can't find that in America. As America, as a systemic America, as America, as governmental America. So then where do you fit in? Your spirituality that you harp on, where can you find that in America? You can't find that in America if you claim America. You see what I'm saying? So you have to find, if you find it in your blackness, then you have to be willing to say, where is their spirituality? All right? So that's what we're going to unite on. Where is their sense of morality? And if you can't find it in them, then that's the whatever, I don't know what the word is for a nigga in foolish or think they white in Somali or in Ethiopian, but that's who they are. They're just like black Americans who think they are white or think they are accepted in white America. They become the exact same thing. And I'll tell you something else too, which is important. Just like you were talking about the underpinnings here, that it always falls back on our community. You tell everybody who you know, check me out on this, follow me on this. You are only American by virtue of the 14th Amendment. Is that my camera right there?
Yep.
You are only American by virtue of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which says that anyone born on U.S. soil is a citizen. That's what makes you American. Not your commitment to the country, not your love for America, not that you built the country, only that you were born here. There's an argument getting ready to go in front of the Supreme Court on the concept of what? Birthright citizenship. And now everybody will tell you that it's about immigrants. But if you're willing to talk about immigrants here going on right now, then you have to talk about the onslaught on the one thing that makes you a citizen, the Constitution of the United States. So they have attacked the First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech, right? They sued the Uhuru movement saying that they didn't have the right to say what they wanted to say because it sounded too much like Russians. They attacked all these colleges that are saying, people are standing up and saying, free Palestine. They call them anti-Semitic and they're pulling money from them and they're saying they don't have the right to say that. And they want to arrest people for that. They're doing the same thing with the press. Anybody who says anything that's not consistent with the president, they're trying to sue him or shut him down, right? That's the First Amendment. What happens at the First Amendment? Peaceful protest. The right to peaceful protest, right? So they're running up on these peaceful protests as a way of shutting down the First Amendment. Move on. Go to the Fourth Amendment. For unreasonable search and seizure is the Fourth Amendment. Where have you seen unreasonable searches and seizures? The Supreme Court just said that they can profile someone because they look Latino. Ain't nobody look more Latino than you. I'm telling you a fact. They know, and look, you look Latino, you look Dominican, you look maybe deep Puerto Rican, maybe even El Salvadorian, right?
Haitian.
Haitian, right? So if you can run up on somebody like that without probable cause, ask them for their papers, grab them and hold them because of their papers, what is the purpose of the Fourth Amendment? That you cannot have unreasonable searches and seizures without probable cause. So if you eliminate that, which is what they did with the Supreme Court decision, you now have the First Amendment under attack, the Fourth Amendment obliterated. Wait a minute, you just grabbed me off the street and took me in? Oh my God, I'm at least entitled to a hearing. No, you're not. We're sending you off to Swaziland. We're deporting you to El Salvador. Wait a minute, I thought we had due process. Well, due process comes where? From that document that they call the Constitution that gives you citizenship if you're black. The Fifth Amendment. Wait a minute, we don't have Fifth Amendment? Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You sign these papers right here saying that you voluntarily deport. Well, wait a minute. I'm not tied to a right to counsel when I'm signing a particular document. Well, ain't that the Sixth Amendment? Wait a minute. Are you accusing me of doing something? Aren't I entitled to confront my accusers in a courtroom? Now your Fifth and your Sixth Amendment rights are being attacked by the same administration that about ready to argue on birthright citizenship. Wait a minute, come on. There's got to be more to this. What about cruel and unusual punishment? The Eighth Amendment? Are we really giving abortions to women who come into these particular facilities without a court order to give them abortions. They did that during eugenics, by the way, already. So they're doing it again now. The reports are coming out. So that's an Eighth Amendment violation of cruel and unusual punishment. So even if you come back into the country, you won't be able to have any kids. There will be no birthright citizenship coming from those wombs, right? So now your Eighth Amendment is gone. The 10th Amendment. Oh, really? There's a 10th Amendment? None of you ever read the 10th Amendment, so please don't fool me, right? It says that any law that's in the Constitution, that is anything that's not in the Constitution, the federal Constitution, right? This is basic. I'm giving you the nutshell review. If it's not in the Constitution, that right inures to the state to do what it wants to do as it relates to that. This is why you can't put federal troops on state territory, because the state is sovereign. Oh, did they do that? Did they bring the National Guard into D.C.? It's not a state. So then they did it what? They brought it in L.A., they brought it in Chicago, federal troops. And a judge said, you did it, that's illegal. And did they follow the judge's order? Due process again, gone. You know what happened with that? It was the 14th Amendment that said it was illegal. The 14th Amendment says that anybody born or naturalized here is a citizen of the United States, and that everyone here under the subject of jurisdiction is entitled to the privileges and immunities and the due process rights here. So due process is now gone from the 14th Amendment. The privileges and immunities from the same 14th Amendment are gone. Ooh. And now they're attacking naturalized citizenship, which will be gone. And then what would be left? You were born here in the United States with then a constitution that has no validity, because all you would have, because the president owns the Supreme Court and he's not listening to the other courts, so that therefore the separation of powers is gone. The heart of the Constitution. And since Congress is controlled by the Republicans and they're willing to pass anything that this particular president says, now that particular part of the separation of powers is gone. So all you have is a unitary president making all the decisions by the time this particular thing is done. And what do you think he'll do with birthright citizenship now, since you're foundational?
Listen, I'm glad that you put it in this way, as someone who's specialized in constitutional law for a very long time. Because when I said it online, the people came at me because I asked them, how many of these situations have you seen them asking somebody for an ID? I just saw a video of a woman literally strap her passport to her forehead to walk around the streets. But at what point, for me, is like, it doesn't sink in for people to understand, or the argument is, well, it's always been bad for us, so we do nothing differently, huh? I think our do something differently was the idea that if we just got Kamala in office, everything will be great for black people and we can go to brunch.
But that was only for the people who believed that she was black. And again, the concept of what it is to be black came into that particular discussion. All right? It came into that. I got in an argument with a very noteworthy leader in the black community because I said to one of his minions that you think you white. This person was black. The Grand Poobah, nationally recognized leader, took me on that. What do you mean he thinks he's white? Education, because he's educated, because he can articulate, this, that, the third. And I just looked at him. And when he was finished, I said, are you finished? He said, yeah. I said, black people don't call other black people, say other black people are white because they are articulate. Black people aren't anti-education. Black people are anti those people who get an education, who are articulate, who should be in the position to lead, treating other black people who don't have that the same way white people would treat them. White racists. And I'm not talking about all white people, for those who get it, you know, who just don't get it. All right? Those who are of that white supremacist narrative, those black people who think they are just like those Somalis who say they ain't black, who think they better than Negroes, they treat them exactly the same. And they could be liberals, what they consider to be liberal, or conservative, but they think that they're somehow better than the average black person, and they talk down to black people. They don't show up for black people things. They show up when white people tell them to show up for black people things, etc. So they are acting the same way white people, and that's why I would say to them, you think you white. It got nothing to do with their education. It got something to do with they use their education and their voice the exact same way that white people would do it. And that's the concept of blackness that we, if we're going to address one, that's the one we need to address. Because once we begin to address that, then those people who are on the margins, am I black? Should I side with the black people? Will see that there is a movement, which you haven't had, a movement, which is what the civil rights movement, the black power movement, the black arts movement, which all was coalescing at the same time, which brought other people in to be able to say, I want to be a part of that because it's standing for the things that I say I stand for. And I don't know one Somali citizen, regardless of whether they say they're black or not, or whether they think bad of black people, who don't want to feel like they belong in a movement that is actually benefiting the country and that will benefit their people. Everybody's like that. White liberals came into the civil rights movement because they thought that it could benefit. It would make the America look like the America that they were raised up to believe that it was. Land of equal opportunity, etc. They began to rock with Malcolm, who was harder on white folks than anybody in American history. But they began to understand why he was talking the way he was talking. They began to read Fanon. They began to read this, the universality of coming together. All you got to do is look at it. The Black Panthers read Mao Zedong. Ho Chi Minh read the Declaration of Independence and quoted Malcolm X. Fidel Castro came to visit here and stayed in Harlem and had special meetings with Malcolm X and didn't have meetings with the State Department. I mean, over and over and over, the interconnection and the necessity for the interconnection is staring us in the face, but we run from it. When in 1950, it was William Patterson and Paul Robeson who charged genocide. They wrote a document and a book called We Charge Genocide. The people who rallied behind that were those same Africans who were on the continent because the United States refused to have it heard here. They had to go to France to file it. And the Africans in France were the ones who pushed it forward into the United Nations. They're not afraid of the coming together. Many of them, the smart ones, the educated ones, the ones who believe in brotherhood, Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, they're not afraid of it. They just are not going back to being what white folks say they were. If you say we are black, we want to go back to the tribe that we were. We want to go back to the land that we own. We want to take everything back from you. Here, we haven't gotten to the point to where we want to take everything back. We are settling, truth be told, at blackness because it gives us a unique ability. We even call it black culture, but it's American culture. It's a black American culture is what we call it. Hip hop is a black American culture. So if somebody says the blues came from Guinea-Bissau, there's a blues artist, by the way, from Guinea-Bissau who was playing the blues. If you go back and look at some old footage of blacks dancing, 1950s, it's exactly what they're doing in hip hop. It's the exact same thing.
So the interesting thing is, like, when you have those conversations, right? Because I saw a video where someone spliced different dances what we do with our feet. So like in DC, we beat our feet. Right. In Chicago, they have their own style. And then they splice it with videos of how it is that they do certain dances on the continent of Africa. And I was like, it doesn't leave. No. The movement, the knowledge of who we are, it doesn't leave. It is literally a bloodstream. We are connected, right? We are connected at the root. But then we'll have those conversations of people like, well, everything started in Africa. See, y'all got it from us. Versus the interconnectedness. We cousins.
That's right.
Hey, cousin.
That's right.
You know, that familial identity that says we are one people. We are rhythm and blues. We are hip hop. We are the drum. We are language. We are food. I have not stepped into one ethnic household where I did not feel like I didn't belong. I've been to Johannesburg. I've been to Cape Town. I've been to homes in Fiji. I've been to homes in Mexico and all over the globe. There's not one place I didn't feel like I didn't belong or that there wasn't something that didn't remind me of my mother or my father or my upbringing. Oh, y'all do that too?
Right.
Wow. Y'all say that too?
Yeah.
Y'all say it this way. Oh, okay. And that has always brought my greater love for a global Black community, because I'm like, oh, there's definitely more of us.
Right. There you go.
There's
That's right.
definitely more of us.
Yeah, I give you one. I'm at Howard University campus, right? I don't think I'm hot. I'm just being me. And I'm in the middle of a class, and they having a discussion, and the brother steps up, and he says something about this brother from, where was the brother from? Somewhere in East Africa. And he said that, no, Sudan. And he says, well, he ain't Black, he's Arab. And I said, what does that mean? What psychological damage has been done to you where you think that Arabs aren't Black? He looked at me and said, he said he was Arab. I said, I'm Arab. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I said, look at my name, Muhammad ibn Yahya Bashir. What do you think that is? That's Arabic. What do you think that is? I said, my bloodline is Arab. I said, but are you missing that the original Arabs were Black? Couldn't register in his mind. He had read Chancellor Williams, Destruction of Black Civilization. And in his mind, all the Arabs were those Persian-looking and Byzantium and the Romans who converted to Islam. So as far as he was concerned, that's the only Arab. Those are people who are Arabized. But the original Arab is Aswa, is dark skin. And I'm trying to explain it to him. It would not register. Because in his mind, Blackness was as he defined it. And so me trying to define, saying, look at me, I'm an Arab. He's like, no, you adopting their Arab culture. I mean, I heard, what's the guy's name? Omar Johnson. Right? He got talking about, oh, I was a Muslim, and during the time that I was a Muslim, everybody wanted to be an Arab. And then he came right behind that and said, the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a blue black Arab. I said, well, if that's the case, whose culture was he following? If he's Black and he's the progenitor, the leader, right? Then that's so-called Black culture. So then why would you say that Black people who want to be like him are following a culture that's foreign to them? It doesn't make sense. It just does, and that's the hard part. Again, because we have a definition here of what it is to be Black, rightly so. Because coming out of racism, white supremacy, and the inherent destruction, Carter G. Woodson, the inherent destruction of Black mentality here, getting to the point of saying, of recognizing that Black is not a negative, and then trying to promote it as a positive, to me is a good thing. It's a step forward. But now that you've made that step forward, you don't get the right to define Blackness for everybody. You just don't get a chance to do it. And then when you don't know the history of other people as to where Blackness comes from, where Arabs come from, who is Kush, what are Nubians, etc., that came here, that led to you being a Negro, and now you're trying to trace your way back to Nubia, back to Kush, back to Ethiopia. You don't have that right. So what you should do is say, wait a minute, there is, as you say, an interconnection. That interconnection is something that we have to build on. And I don't care whether or not you call yourself Black. I know that when that drum beat hits, you start tapping that foot.
Listen.
Look at the engineer tapping his foot already.
I ain't
even got a drum. But that's what it is. And I think that's the part that I think that we're missing when we try to define Blackness. And I would just love, I really appreciate the question. I didn't anticipate the question like that, but I appreciate the question because, again, the concept has to be understood within a context. You are Black right now based on the struggle that was fought and the arguments that were made over colored, Negro, mulatto, or you don't even call anybody a mulatto now, do you? Or Creole, right?
Not unless you're in New Orleans.
Even in New Orleans, they try to shy away from it now. They just want to be Black, right? But that's just the nature of the evolution that you have to go through. Now you and your generation are born Black. And so you can embrace it, but you can't give it to everybody. You have to accept them where you find them, just like you had to be accepted where you were found.
Okay, so last words, because this is something that I want to know, because I think about this in terms of gatekeeping, right? I think that Blackness, in terms of culture, is a very costumed thing. That somehow everybody believes they can just like bottle it up and drink it, and I too can rap, and I too can be Beyonce, right? You know, you have these discussions about K-pop. Where do you get that from? You got this from Black culture, but you wouldn't dare allow us to take something that is Korean and remix it.
Right.
You know, that would be blasphemous, right? So how do we, in one sense, gatekeep what's special to us, right? Because it becomes, everything that's Black becomes popular and commodified, and everybody else makes money off of it outside of us. How do we gatekeep it while still sharing and ingratiating people into the culture?
And that's probably the key question. That's a great question, because again, there is a concept of Black American culture. That is, but if you understand it that as being commodified, then you understand the reason for it. It was allowed to be created so it could be commodified. You understand? So that you won't connect to other cultures around the world, that they would have to connect to you on what level? Do you have a Black culture that says they connect to you on the intellectual level? But on entertainment, they can connect with you. The K-pops can do the five guys in the band and doing the popping and locking and all that kind of stuff, right? And they can do the 5-part harmonies and all that kind of stuff. And they can do the dancing and the hip-hop dancing and all that kind of stuff, right? And they even got to where they can do spoken word poetry now. I mean, I saw it in the Olympics. They had a Japanese girl win the gold medal or the bronze medal or something in hip-hop dancing.
Oh, God, you saw the Australian lady?
Oh, gosh. It was, but the point is
that was a travesty.
that is, it's kind of like sports and entertainment are the kinds of things that are allowed to be exported. Intellect, history, decision-making, leadership are not allowed to be exported. You understand?
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't get, Fanon is Senegalese, wrote about the Algerian War. They couldn't get the Wretched of the Earth published. Same thing with Carter G. Woodson here. He couldn't get the Miseducation of the Negro published. They had to fight and do back things. I mean, people had to be passing it like they were doing it in the trunk of their car when hip hop was selling tapes out of their seat,
trunk,
because they won't export that kind of brilliance. Malcolm is, my humble opinion, dead because he went international.
Yeah.
That particular willingness to connect Blackness from there to Blackness from here,
Absolutely.
because they would see that there is an intellectual component to Black America. The Wretched genocide and the attack on Paul Robeson was a connection between those revolutions that were happening in Africa that were, and he said the Black Americans, Black America was sold as a commodity. They were sending jazz artists overseas to play in bands, and everybody thought, oh, the Blacks were doing fine over here in America. Wretched genocide says something totally different. Paul Robeson became persona non grata after that. And so therefore you can commodify 50 Cent raps, even if he's stealing Fela Kuti beats. You can commodify that, but you can't commodify the things that raise liberation, that unite people toward a collective work toward freedom. This is why people like Ibrahim Traore are dangerous to Western thought process. He's saying later for Western thought process. And I don't even care if you call me Black. The point is, everybody in Burkina Faso and everybody in the Sahel states, we're going to come together and control our resources, and we're going to invite everybody else who wants to help us control our resources and defend our country and defend our right to exist. We can't do that on a block yet. Why? Because that cat over there ain't Black enough, or he too Black, or you see what I'm saying? We have to get the understanding that, yes, okay, I recognize that I'm Black. Cool. I recognize that you may think that you're something else. Now, what do we have in common, though? I say the only thing we have in common is that we're Black. If that's all you have in common with your fellow man, then you in bad shape, as far as I'm concerned. You know, I mean, I do a mock trial team The vast majority of them are Latins or Latinos. Can you imagine me saying, I'm not doing this if I can't get some black kids in here? Even though I want to help every black kid I can possibly help. Mm-hmm. But I also want to help every kid I can help. And so therefore I have a commonality with those Latinos. Mm-hmm. Because I want to help every kid that comes along. That's the part that I don't think we get. That in your blackness, take pride in it. But don't give your pride away, and don't demand your pride be the harbinger of what somebody else's situation is if you don't know their situation. Mm. And please don't think that every brother is a brother, because they can be black, and every
skinfolk ain't kinfolk.
I'm telling you, Lord knows.
And that's for damn sure. And also, to that end, I really want people, I did a series about this in terms of black expatriation and immigration, and Paul Robeson was somebody that I talked about, and I need people to really look at his story and how he even died, and how they stripped this black man of his passport. Mm-hmm. Those folks think that 14th Amendment, that birthright citizenship, will never be stripped from you. It absolutely has happened in the history of people who represent us, who have spoken up and who have done those things. And I think that is something that I think about too when I'm out here and I'm saying the things that I say, that I know what's at risk and at stake as somebody who is globalized, who has made impact with students abroad, who has taught abroad, who has introduced people to the works of Langston Hughes and Maya Angelou and James Baldwin, you know what I mean, overseas and things of that nature. But I think that especially, my generation, we speak about your generation and where it is that they have the cultural prides and the disconnect. I think we need to move closer to where we understand the power dynamic of what it is that we hold. That isn't just about entertainment. We talked about this last episode, and how it is that we can tap dance for somebody, but actually want to be smart. That is okay to have intellect. That is okay to read books. That is okay to get more information. And I think that even what we see with online discourse about different things, whether it's politics or whether it's about race identity and all of those things, people forget that we don't have to agree.
Right.
I don't have to agree with you.
Right.
But at the very least, at the core of it, let's respect each other and let's identify that we do indeed have a common goal. Now, if you are full-blown black skin, white mask, then you can go on over here somewhere, because you know what I'm saying? You think like white folks, and that's not the community that I'm looking to build. But folks who we may disagree on some pain points, that's okay. I'm the middle of 5 children. I don't think I've ever agreed with all of my siblings on anything in my whole entire 39 years of living. But what it is that I've recognized is that people don't understand that we can have that disagreement and still say, you know what? Fundamentally, I want liberation for my people. Right. Fundamentally, I want freedom for my people. Fundamentally, I want my people to eat. I want our communities not to be taken over. Shout out to the Pack World who created this shirt that's Chocolate City. This is DC that has become gentrified heavily, just like Inglewood, just like Brooklyn, just like so many other black cities that we have had. We need to recognize that if we don't begin to see each other as brethren, we are going to continue to be wiped out in every single way possible.
Right, because we share the same enemy, which is white supremacy. For those of you who are listening who are Europeans, who consider yourself white, I'm not talking white people. I'm talking about white supremacy. If you fall into the category of acceptance of white supremacy, then you're a white supremacist. But I'll give you a story. You ready? In my lifetime, again, I might have been, 10 years old, 11 years old. When they buried Malcolm, I was probably 11. Okay. And by the way, they came to our home to organize that. In any event.
Wait, organize Malcolm's burial. Yep. Yeah. I just wanted to be clear. I know this, but.
Right. We used to go to a school in 69 Van Ness Place in Newark, New Jersey. It was called Dinu Allahu Masjid, under the tutelage of a great imam, Hajj Karam. And one night we were there just chilling, and the kids were chilling, and the parents were in the back having a class. And it was a knock on the door. Listen closely to this. This is history. The knock on the door. Brother goes to the door. He answers the door. Two members of the FBI. They show the credentials. Brother comes back. He calls Haji Karam. Haji Karam goes to the door. What can I do to help you? He said, look, and I'm going to get right to the point. I heard you in here teaching Negroes that they're other than Negroes. Now, back then, during that time, if you remember, 40s, 50s, 60s, as a lot of people are beginning to get into culture. Mm-hmm. That's what attracted Dad to Islam. Mm-hmm. All right? He was brought by his family to be the preacher. But now they're talking about culture. They're talking about Africa. They're talking about Arabs. They're talking about Islam. They're talking about Palestine. This is in the 40s and the 50s. And this is what's drawing black people into discussions about culture, different cultures. Where do you come from? Who are we as a people? This is the 50s. Haji Karam turns around, invites the guys into the house. All right? He brings them into the room where all the adults are, gathers all the children there. He says just like this, are there any Negroes in here? Nobody raised their hand. He turns to them and says, well, see, we're not teaching Negroes anything. The FBI agent says, we own Negroes. You can teach them anything you want to about religion, but if you teach them anything else outside of that, except religion, we're going to shut you down. Mm. We own the Negroes. This is what he said. At that point, I knew that whatever I was on, as it relates to learning about cultures, as it was learning about the history, as it was learning about the Moors who conquered Spain, as it was learning about the Nubians that we were going through, as we were learning Islamic education, we were learning culture, how you got here. Mm-hmm. I knew we were on the right path because they said, right there, the FBI, we own the Negroes. You don't have the right to teach them anything. Absolutely blew my mind. I always reflect on that every time I pick up a book. Every time. Every job I ever took, I reflect on that. You don't own me. Mm-hmm. You don't own me. I'm free. I know who I am.
That's why I don't like these jobs.
Yeah, you don't own me. You don't own me. You know.
And that's a good place to land. I think because agency over yourself and understanding that you do have that agency. That quote by Audre Lorde, I define myself for myself. Mm-hmm. It's something that I say to people all the time. Online, you don't get to define me. I define myself for myself. Mm-hmm. You don't get to tell me who I am just because you don't like my take. Right. I decide who it is that I am. I know exactly who it is that I am, and I'm boisterously loud about that, and I'm very confident about it. And so, to that end, we at the end, episode 2. Marcus, you still hanging in there with us? Marcus still hanging in there with us. That's our engineer. Shout out to Marcus. Shout out to Anwar for this amazing studio, movement podcast studio here in D.C. Shout out to The Pack again for this amazing shirt. Follow them on Instagram at thepack.world. I'm Imani B. You'll find me at She Is Imani B on every single platform. And now you can find our soon-to-be award-winning podcast at the 1219 Podcast, where you get all of your social media needs. Where can they find you, Dad?
I'm Dad. Can you believe that? I'm Dad. Oh, gosh.
40 years later.
40 years later, I'm finally recognized as Dad. In any event, I'm at Raw Law on Facebook, and I'm at hsrn.com with the Raw Law Project every Thursday evening from 8 to 10. And as you were shouting out some people, let me shout out someone in history. Your mother performed this poem when she was on forensics, and it was Langston Hughes. And I keep this with me. I keep it on the tip of my tongue. And I once argued it to a judge in the courtroom where I said, Langston Hughes once said, I can tell you if I wanted to what makes me what I am, but I don't really want to, and you don't give a damn.
There you go.